Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and any bookish things that have happened. It was a big, exciting week for the book world. It was not as much of an exciting week for my reading. We'll get to all of that when we talk about the Friday Reads portion of this video. I'm going to try to make this a bit of a short video because there's another video I want to try to film today. But every time I say I'm going to make a short Friday Reads video, it ends up not being a short Friday Reads video. We'll see how that goes. I am here with my buddy Jamie. She is napping on the couch. She was snoring very loudly before I started talking, so I don't know if you're going to be able to hear that. And while I have the camera here, I want to show off my brand new t-shirt, which I ordered from the podcast Maintenance Phase. They sell t-shirts on, I think, Teespring or TeePublic, I can't remember which, but it says a resounding meh. And I absolutely love it. I can't wait to wear this t-shirt when I have a book that I was very indifferent to talk about. It's going to be fun. But I figured I would wear it today because it's just a fun t-shirt. Brian at Bookish, if you are watching, I know meh is kind of your thing and I've now stolen it. But I love this t-shirt and I can't wait to wear it when it is actually relevant to a book that I have read. Now, the reason that I want to try to make this a little bit short, well, it's two things. We'll get to the Friday Reads portion of the video and my reading week in a little bit, but the Washington Post announced its top 10 books of 2022, and I want to do a reaction video to it. I did one last year. I try to limit the amount of reactions I do to best books of the year list, but I love best books of the year season, and we are into it now. I'm really looking forward to the New York Times 100 Notable Books, which will probably be coming out either this weekend or next week, because it's usually released sometime around Thanksgiving. And then their 10 best books of the year list usually comes out not long after their 100 notable list. And of course, the 10 best books are usually on the 100 notable. So it's fun to just sort of try to read the tea leaves. I try to limit myself to not do a whole lot because I don't like just constantly barraging like reactions to best lists, especially if they are lists that just start seeing the same books again and again. I'm a fan of the Washington Post one in particular. They have a great book section. Obviously, the New York Times has a really great section, and I enjoyed doing the Publishers Weekly one that I did as well. I'll link that down below in case you're interested. But I want to do a reaction video, and in order to film 2 videos today, I got to try to keep this short. So the big things to talk about are that the big book news, other than Washington Post announcing its 10 best books of the year, is the National Book Awards happened, and the winner was The Rabbit Hutch. I did a full reaction to the ceremony. I'll link that down below if you would like to check it out. And I think that's the last major book award of this year. I do want to talk about the finalists for the American Library Association, or ALA's, Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in the fiction category, because they sound amazing. And I had read one of the 3 finalists, and I immediately put a hold on one of the books on Scribd, and I actually got one of the others from Libby, and we'll see if I can manage to squeeze it in my reading next week. We'll see. It's going to be interesting how that works. But so I'll put a link to this site down below if you want to check it out. I'm not going to talk about the long list, although it was a good long list. The American Library Association's notable titles can be a good indicator of the Pulitzer Prize as well. You have to kind of eliminate books from the list that are not actually eligible because the Pulitzer Prize goes to an American author, and you kind of have to weed out anything that is not by an American author. But there really isn't any indicator, and this is not the notable list, but the finalists for the Andrew Carnegie Medal it's a solid list, and I encourage you to check out the link down below. But I'm going to talk about the 3 finalists now very quickly. The first one is a book that I had not heard of at all. It's called Greenland by David Santos Donaldson. This is the one that I immediately looked up and found on Scribd. So the audio is on hold, and hopefully I'll be getting to it at some point because it sounds good. Here is the blurb that they have. It is published by Amistad, which is an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers. Donaldson delivers a psychologically acute portrayal of a queer black man crumbling under the weight of personal, historical, and racial trauma. That sentence alone, and I was like, oh, I want to read this book. Despite heavy subject material, Kip's irreverent narration provides moments of memorable levity. And then I looked it up for a bit of a longer description on bookshop.org. I added it to my bookshop.org wish list. And then I looked around. My library didn't have a copy, but I did find it on Scribd. So the audio is there, and I'm really looking forward to this book. And I definitely wanted to talk about the finalists for this prize because that sounds amazing. And I have seen some other good reviews since I looked into it a little bit further. This is not going to be announced until January 29th, which is one of the reasons I say I think the National Book Award is one of the last actual awards for the year, because this one will not happen until January. And I think around the time of that prize is usually when the American Library Association announces its notable titles for the year. So it'll be interesting to watch for that as well. The next one is the one that I read and I own a copy of, and I have been singing its praises ever since. It's Night of the Living Res by Morgan Talty. These are linked stories. If you follow along, you've heard me talk about this book. I feel like every year there's at least one book that I read and just immediately latch onto and want more people to read and to discover. My beloved The Secret Lives of Church Ladies is one example of that. This is definitely the one for 2022 for me in that regard. I'm a huge fan. I've loved seeing other people pick this book up and to discover it and love it just as much as I have. I know there have been some people who struggled getting into the first few stories. I think pretty much all of them eventually completely fell under the book's spell. I'm a big fan. Let's see what they say about it. This is published by Tin House, by the way. At the heart of this collection of linked stories is David, a member of the Penobscot Nation in Maine, in whose small world native traditions mix matter-of-factly with binge watches of The Sopranos. With a clear-eyed and compassionate gaze, Talty reveals the complexity of his characters and the ways they are shaped by their community and their pasts. That is a great description of this book. It is heavy, but it's also funny. It has a great sense of humor, and it has a great sense of compassion and empathy and understanding. And by the end of the book, it was packing such a heavy punch, and I know that's a bit of a cliche to say, but this is a book that just sucker punched me by the time I got to the end. I'm a huge fan. It's the only one of the three finalists that I have read, but I have a hard time believing that one would surpass it in my estimation. However, Greenland sounds incredible, and I've heard really good things about the third book that is a finalist, which is The Swimmers by Julie Otsuka. I did read Julie Otsuka's previous book, The Buddha in the Attic. She really plays with voice, because The Buddha in the Attic is told by a chorus of women who were mail order brides, I think around World War II or just after World War II. I can't remember. I liked it, but did not love it. But I've heard a lot of really great things about The Swimmers. And I had initially thought that I would want to just kind of stay away from it because it's a little bit about loss, and I wasn't sure I wanted to do that. I think I'm in a headspace now where I might be able to. So I was able to get a copy of this on Libby. I'll try to fit it in next week. This is published by Alfred A. Knopf, a division of Penguin Random House. In an underground pool, a collective we reports the comings and goings of the titular swimmers, regulars who have established their schedules, lanes, and paces with comforting familiarity until a crack in the pool floor causes upheaval. The water was an essential haven for Alice, whose story above ground is a polyphonic reveal through her fading memories. Otsuka's devastating masterpiece is an extraordinary examination of the fragility of human relationships. Sounds kind of devastating, but also beautiful, and I've heard just consistently good things about it. And again, it employs that interesting narrative framework where there's a chorus of voices talking to you at once, which is a narrative form you don't see very often. The only other example I can think of is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides, and done correctly, it is excellent. So I'm really looking forward to this. And then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the three nonfiction finalists, but I will mention them. There's Constructing a Nervous System by Margot Jefferson, An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden World Around Us by Ed Yong, and Vagina Obscura, An Anatomical Voyage by Rachel E. Gross. And if you want more about those books, definitely check out the link that I'm going to have in the description box down below. Hello again. This is the me that is editing the video that I just filmed. It was still cold, so I put on another layer. But I forgot to mention that with the holiday next week, my schedule could be a little crazy, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to film a Friday Reads. And there's a chance that I will film one early in the week. I don't know, but I just want to put it out there that there may not be a Friday Reads next week because of the holiday. And if there is not, I'm just going to say happy Thanksgiving to all of you who celebrate right now. If you are in the United States and you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I totally understand why, but I hope you have a nice long weekend. And if I don't film a Friday Reads, I will see you the following week. So that's the big thing I want to talk about in addition to my Friday Reads. I'm going to kind of leave it at that so we can talk about the reading I've done this week, which is not a lot. I have a lot of things that I want to get done before the end of the year. Not a lot of things. I kind of manage my expectations, and I'll have a link to my video that I did based on what I want to accomplish before the end of the year in terms of my reading. I'm trying to keep it at an achievable level, but I've been very slow with my reading this week. I started like gangbusters working on the audio of Jane Eyre, which I'm doing as a buddy read with Erica from The Broken Spine. I will have a link to her channel in the description box down below as well. If you haven't discovered her channel, it's great. I love it. And she's a good person as well. So we're continuing our buddy read. I made a lot of progress early in the week and then did that dangerous thing where I kind of thought to myself, well, let me catch up on some podcasts because I'm doing really well on timing for this and I don't want to get ahead of myself and finish the section. And then now I'm at the same point I was last week, where I'm, I think, 3 chapters behind where the check-in point is, and we're supposed to check in tomorrow. I'm still loving this book. I know a lot of people are divisive on the subject of Jane Eyre. I am kind of surprised by how much I'm enjoying it. I don't know where a lot of it is going to go. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. And I'm trying to not do what I would typically do reading a classic, which is, research and study up on a lot of what I'm reading and what it means, just to make sure I don't miss anything, especially if I'm not doing it as part of a school. I think that's what's allowing me to do that, is the fact that I'm doing it as a buddy read with someone else. I'm kind of just floating through the book and seeing what impressions of it I get, which is fun. But I am enjoying it. And Erica has read this book many times and has a lot of deeper level understanding of the book, and that is kind of helping guide me along as well. I'll talk more about this probably once we finish, and I think by the end of the month we should be done. But I want to save most of my thoughts for Erica, since we are going to be checking in about this over the weekend. We're halfway through at this point, I think. I'm listening to it on audio, actually, and I went on a journey because I was trying to find an audio that I liked, and there were a lot that I really didn't like. There was, for example, there was one audio where it sounded like the narrator was doing like a witch voice, like really trying to emphasize the creepier portions of the story, but even in the parts that weren't creepy, she was still talking in a sort of witch voice, and I was like, I can't do this. So I settled on a version that is narrated by Anna Bentinck. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And I'm really loving that. She does a great job with the narration. I knew it was going to be possible for there to be a good audio version of Jane Eyre, and I'm glad that I found one. The other book that I am currently reading is, I'm sorry, I'm a little disorganized today because I'm also working on my Now in November Pulitzer Prize post, which, before I continue, let me talk about that. So I have material lying around that I'm using as references for it. I'm almost done with my deep dive on Now in November. I made a decision that I ordered myself a copy of Josephine Johnson's memoir, which is called 7 Houses. It's a really short book, and there was a used copy online for under $10. So I ordered it, and I feel like I need to hold on my deep dive until that comes and I can read it, because I'm curious. I don't think it will talk about why she didn't publish very much later in life, but I'm curious to see if it does, because there's not a whole lot of what's inside that book online, so I feel like I need to just get a copy for myself. And I would hate to speculate just on the off chance that maybe she addresses some of that in the book. So that is the holdup on that. It's like basically done at this point, but I want to, for the sake of diligence, get that and just see what happens. So the physical book that I'm reading is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I made another burst of progress on, I think, Sunday of last week, and I picked it back up on Monday, and I stalled out and kind of emotionally distanced myself from the book. I hadn't really thought about this. I thought about it, but didn't think it would be an issue. So this is a modern retelling. It's actually set in the 90s, but modern retelling of David Copperfield, set in Appalachia, using the foster system in place of like orphanages and workhouses and things like that. And Jamie just moved closer to me because she's a cutie pie. And obviously I had a foster son. He's out in the world on his own right now. So there was always the potential for that to kind of tag into complicated emotions that I have around my foster son, his life, and the way things are in our relationship right now. And it kind of hit a point and particularly because something happens to Demon Copperhead's mother, and it reminds me very much of something that happened with my foster son and his biological mother while he was living with us. So I just took a step back for a couple of days. I'm still really loving this book. It is a complicated read because it's difficult when you have been part of the foster system, not as a child, but as a foster parent. The general attitude is to portray foster parents as terrible people who are abusing a system, not kind to kids. And I understand why. That is a real thing that has happened. But it's difficult because I was a foster parent. I know a lot of foster parents. And all of the foster parents that I know are really genuinely good people who are trying to help kids who need help. And it can be a little bit annoying when the way foster parents are always portrayed is just that they're terrible people. But at the same time, that is a story that exists. I've also heard instances of people becoming foster parents because they are like hardcore Christians and they specifically want to get an LGBTQI kid because they want to try to teach them about their religion. And I have heard about that happening as well. So, and I have also I've heard stories about like what happens, like the first foster placement that Demon ends up in is a tobacco farm. And they're basically, he and the other foster kids in the house are used as labor. I have heard that things like that happen and that they exist, but at the same time, there are good foster parents out there who are really trying to make a difference. And it's also true that the foster system is pretty broken and often does harm to kids in the foster system, although it is trying to do well for them. Like, there are a lot of really well-meaning people, but the way the system is structured frequently hurts and damages. And that's a whole thorny issue. Again, it's difficult because kids are different. The level of experience and trauma that they have is different from kid to kid to kid. Their personality is going to be very different. So you have to try to come up with a system that's going to address all of those things, even though nothing is uniform about anything that goes on. So it's a complicated thing. The book kind of triggered some of my weird feelings around it. I took a step back during the week. I do want to get back into it and finish. I've heard so many good things from people who have finished it or are also reading it, and I'm loving it. I'm really, really loving it, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. But I'm going to leave it at that for now because, again, I'm going to try to film a second video today where I talk about Washington Post's top 10 books of 2022. And if I manage to pull that off, you will be seeing that probably on Sunday, but I'm going to leave it at that so I can get to filming that. I'd love to hear what you've been up to this week, what you've been watching, reading, all of that stuff. Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.